Following James's roar, the force of Justin's sword shattered layer by layer. It melted like ice. Under Justin's feet, the sound waves was like a huge dragon that passed through, leaving behind a 300-foot-long gully on the ground. All the rocks and dirt on the ground exploded. Justin felt his ears ringing, and stars appeared in his eyes. Under the impact of the huge sound waves, he was sent flying dozens of feet away. His ears were shot, and scarlet blood started flowing out of them. "Where's your daddy now? Is he running to save you? I don't see him anywhere." James squinted his eyes and looked at Justin, who was in a sorry state. The true dragon roar was another benefit that the beast core had given him. With the combination of the Buddhist sect's lion's roar and the true dragon roar, even a 7th layer of heavenly human stage would be injured when caught off guard. Although the attack wasn't directed at them, it still caused everyone's ears to ring, and it took them a long time to recover. They were still shocked when they looked at the ravine on the ground again. "Bastard! Bastard!" Justin looked at James vicious and roared, "You forced me to do this." Genuine chi on Justin's body surged to the extreme. It kept spreading out in all directions, and it condensed into a 25-foot-tall blue earth idol. It looked like it was filled with hatred. It held a sword in its right hand and a cord in its left hand. It looked down on the world and all living beings. A Chalice seal. Justin is truly an extraordinary genius. He's cultivated the Chalice seal. Donald cried out in shock and said with fear, "This seal is the most powerful technique in the world. It's absolutely invincible, even among those at the same cultivation level. It feels like Rafael Padilla really thinks highly of his son if he gave this technique to him. James is in trouble now." "Are you proud that you forced me to use this move?" Justin coldly looked down at James. "I don't want to waste time on you. It's time to end this." The corner of James's mouth curled up into a sneer, and he said faintly, "Justin, open your eyes wide and watch carefully. I know what you know, but you don't have what I have. The integration of the Buddha and Tao, an indestructible tyrannical body. I have the most powerful techniques of all." There was a sound of genuine chi exploding, and to everyone's shock, James had also condensed an earth idol with purple flames burning all over its body. The earth idol was 30 feet tall. Justin's Chalice seal looked like a child next to it. Everyone was filled with shock and fear as they trembled and looked at James. This earth idol was shocking, not only because of its size, but because it looked exactly like James. "My goodness, this guy has made it. His earth idol is himself. What an idea!" Donald gulped, and the corner of his mouth twitched. But regardless of whether it was the earth idol or the Chalice seal, they both could be condensed with the help of the element of earth. Each and every move contained the aura of a figure condensed from the earth idol. But how could James condense his own earth idol? Everyone gasped when they saw the two titans. Was this still a battle among the younger generation? The things that these two condensed were simply shocking. This was especially true for James's earth idol, which was much taller. When his eyes swept across the field, no one dared to look at him in the eyes. Justin's finger trembled uncontrollably as he looked at James's earth idol. At this moment, his confidence was shaken. What kind of monster was this James? How could he condense such a thing? Was he even human? James's earth idol looked down at the Chalice seal in front of him. Under everyone's stunned eyes, the earth idol spoke. Its voice was arrogant and domineering, shaking the heavens with its magnitude. "Was it this little guy? A good move. But it would be a disgrace to leave it in your hands. He's not even that big. Am I supposed to be impressed? He controls the genuine chi so perfectly. It's truly unbelievable that he's able to condense the sound too, the king murmured. This young man is a genius. When everyone heard this, the corners of their mouths twitched. A little thing? He called a creature that was 25 feet tall a little thing? Don't think that you can just use this thing just because you created it. It's just a mere decoration. Watch me chop it to pieces. Justin focused his mind and took a deep breath. Then he raised his sword and slashed down. 4 seas become mountains. The sword went down as if it were cutting through the sky. Before the sword landed, its energy had already arrived, but the ground couldn't withstand the sword she at all. It cracked inch by inch, shocking people. They frantically retreated to avoid being dragged into the battlefield. James looked at them with indifference. The fist of his earth idol was burning with purple flame, and a large amount of dragon chi was mixed into it. A huge dragon head quickly formed. True dragon, heaven-shaking fist. With a heaven-shaking roar, a giant purple flame dragon soared out from James's arm and collided with the sword. Loud explosions sounded like a large bomb, with the 2 earth idols at the center. The ground within a several hundred feet radius of them exploded and collapsed. A 5-clawed dragon shadow reverberated. Wherever it went, the huge churning power shattered everything in the area. A huge mushroom cloud rose up in the air. Everyone felt their mouths go dry and their hearts were filled with fear. This was such a violent explosion. What happened to them? Don't tell me they're both dead, said someone in the audience. Even if they didn't die in the explosion, they will surely be injured still, right? But what happened with the punch just now? Could they still transform under it? And if it's only the true chi formation, how could it be so powerful? People were talking. They were all staring at the center of the explosion, wondering what the result would be. After a long time, the mushroom cloud finally dispersed. Figures slowly appeared in front of everyone. James's eyes were indifferent. The aura on his body shook, and the dust fell from his body. He slowly walked out as if nothing had happened. Everyone stared at him. After such a huge explosion, how was this man completely fine? How was this possible? And what about Justin? Where did he go? Everyone looked at the center of the explosion again and saw a figure covered in blood and gasping for air. The ground where Justin was standing was completely burnt. There was still a faint purple flame burning around him. He wanted to raise his head, but he couldn't do it, no matter how hard he tried. He struggled to open his eyes and looked at James with hatred and fear. He lost. I didn't expect that Justin would actually lose. He's the 7th layer of Heavenly Human Stage, and he's the son of the King of the East. His ultimate skill is one of the top in the world. How could he be defeated so easily? What do you guys know? Can't you see, although Justin is very powerful, his opponent's even stronger in every aspect. He doesn't fear the aura of an emperor at all. As for the Chalice seal, it's incredibly impressive, but it loses in comparison to the Earth idol. But the new god I had is quite the nerve to beat Justin to such a state. Isn't he afraid that the Eastern King will take revenge on him? I refuse to accept this. How can trash like you defeat me? How? Seeing that James was about to leave, Justin threw his head back and roared furiously. You bastard. Just you wait. I will shred you to pieces sooner or later. Before he could finish speaking, he was interrupted by a loud sound. The genuine chi in James's hand condensed, and a palm descended from the sky, slapping Justin into the ground. You're noisy. I've given you a chance, but you didn't appreciate it. I wanted to beat you up, but because of what you just said, I'll add more fuel to the fire. After all, you're not the only son of the King of the East. Your brothers will thank me. James looked at Justin indifferently. Besides, if you do not have the status of a king's son, who are you? Well, you're worse than trash. Don't tell me you think you're strong. I'll beat you until you submit. And now that you're crippled, you won't have the nerve to argue, right? Oh, did I accidentally hit you too hard and make you unable to speak? No, forget it. I have nothing to say to a cripple. After saying that, James swaggered off. Everyone gasped as they looked at the huge palm print on the ground, and then Justin. This guy crippled Justin for life. Wasn't James afraid of the Eastern King? All of the young experts of the Eastern Kingdom felt a chill run down their spine. James destroyed their strongest young expert, Justin, so easily. What would he do to them? Their plan was solid. If they could severely injure James in the ranking match, they would be able to capture him. The future was unpredictable. Who knew that James was so powerful? This wasn't an easy defeat. Justin used the strongest Earth idol, the Chalice seal, causing their plan to fail ahead of time. Wait a minute. You can't leave yet. Mr. Reeves was extremely conflicted. He yelled at James in a deep voice, You crippled him. Mayor, didn't you see it all? He wanted to kill me. It was self-defense. James shrugged with an innocent face. You. Mr. Reeves' heart was stifled. He took a deep breath and said seriously, Do you know who Justin is? Do you know what the consequences of this will be? Mayor, of course. I know who he is. I just don't care, James said with a smile. Besides, didn't you say that I should try my best not to kill anyone? I just did as you asked. After the incident with Dexter and the people of the Holy Flame sect, I've been restraining myself. What else do you want from me? Mr. Reeves was speechless. He didn't know what to say anymore. The Eastern King will be furious when he learns about what was done to his son. But the culprit acted as if nothing had happened. James had already killed the grandson of one of the 7 great law executors, Dexter Cruz. He couldn't argue that James didn't hold back this time. Mayor, please calm down. Stop staring at me, James said with a smile. I'm sorry. The arenas have all exploded. It looks like we'll have to rebuild them. I'm sorry about that. Next time, make the arenas sturdier so you don't have to rebuild them every time. Well, if we're done here, I'll leave. Just get someone to call me when it's my turn to compete. After saying that, James strode away with a casual smile on his face. After returning to the hotel, James heaved a sigh of relief. He spat out a mouthful of blood, and his face turned pale. James, how are you? The Alaric Lee asked, worried. I'm injured, but it doesn't matter. I just need a day of rest to recover. Well, that guy is the Eastern King's son. He's very strong. His sword strike had the power to topple mountains and overturn seas. Feels like a mountain has smashed into my body. It was impossible to defend against it. James said it with lingering fear in his heart. Fortunately, I have the indestructible tyrannical body. If I didn't have it, I'd be just as crippled as he is right now. You should feel lucky, Alaric Lee said with a smile. You're safe and sound now. Fortunately, you've merged with the Beast Corps. Otherwise, Justin would have beaten you half to death. You wouldn't even be able to take a single strike from him. None of the kings can be underestimated. They spent thousands of years studying cultivation techniques and concepts. Their comprehension is much better than mine. James took a deep breath and said, Fortunately, Justin's comprehension is limited. Alaric Lee said, Normally, after humans absorb the Beast Core, it would be extremely difficult for them to comprehend the innate ability. But you have really comprehended it, and you even grasped the Dragon Chi, which is a higher grade than the genuine Chi. It will absolutely crush any genuine Chi of the same grade. That's true. but my cultivation level is low. James took a life-recovering pill and rested for a moment. His face finally got its color back. Oh, the gap between a high rank and intermediate heavenly human stage is huge. I'm only 2 steps away from him. He didn't expect the gap in strength to be so huge. Although I've hidden part of my strength, this is my strongest attack at the stage. So your current strength should be close to level 8, but you're not there yet. If you encounter a level 8, escaping is not an issue, but it would be virtually impossible to defeat them. When you reach the high rank of heavenly human stage, the difference between the first and the second is like heaven and earth, Violeric Lee said. You better heal your injuries as soon as you can. Hopefully Justin doesn't find out that you're injured. Get that universe profound fruit and break through. We'll talk about it after you reach the 6th layer of heavenly human stage. This way you'll have the strength to fight 8th heaven. I understand. James nodded and focused on recovering. Meanwhile, on the other side, Justin was ferocious. He kept throwing things as if he had gone mad. His eyes were filled with a bloodthirst. Bastard! Big bastard, that little bastard! How dare he cripple me! I will make him suffer a fate worse than death. Friends, you need to calm down and be patient. Your meridians have been crippled, but it doesn't mean that you can't be treated. When you return home, I believe that His Highness will have a solution, Alfred said calmly. Don't forget who you are. You are the king's son. Justin took a deep breath and calmed down. He said, I know, I was too impulsive. Someone else wouldn't survive this, but I can treat these injuries. Seeing Justin coming back to his senses, Alfred nodded in understanding. He said in a deep voice, Prince, what happened to that brat? We only saw a huge explosion and you fell to the ground. And could this guy be so powerful that he could easily defeat you? Easy. Don't be ridiculous. Justin's eyes were filled with hatred as he said, That kid is definitely not feeling well right now. I hit him with my sword pretty hard. He suffered a serious injury. Otherwise, why do you think he left in such a rush? It's just that my injury is even worse than his. That bastard has a very strong defense. He resisted such a huge explosion. James was well aware that the Eastern experts wanted to attack him, and it was precisely because of this that he wanted to hide his injuries. Someone knocked on the door. James opened it and looked at the person in front of him in shock. Sandy, why are you here? Am I not welcome? She pursed her lips and said, Don't be rude, invite me in, and let's talk inside. All right, come in. James shook his head helplessly and said, You are the king's precious daughter. If someone saw you coming here, it would be a big deal. It's up to them to worry about these things. I'll go wherever I want to go. Sandy looked at James and asked with concern, You're injured. Where are you hurt? Is it serious? You can tell I'm injured, James asked in a low voice. I didn't see it, but my father did. I overheard him and rushed over to see you. So what my father said was true, Sandy said nervously. Your father? King of the West? James took a deep breath and calmed himself down. He smiled. Well, do you think I'm in trouble now? It's just a small injury. It's not serious. If you don't need anything else, you could go back or your father would be worried. Are you kicking me out? Sammy was about to cry. Do you not want to talk anymore? Do you hate me? Yesterday you didn't even eat with me and left. Miss, I'm really busy. If I don't work on my strength, I'll be the one lying in the mud. The corner of James's mouth curled into a bitter smile as he sighed slightly. He said, Besides, you should know that you have the king. I have no back. I'm just a fool without any background. I'm not worth your concern. Once I obtain the universe profound fruit, I have to leave the Western Kingdom. Well, it's getting dark. You should go back. It's not safe here. As an experienced man, James could see the way Sandy looked at him. The King of the West didn't say anything to him. His daughter was so close to him, yet she didn't even say a word. This was strange. Even though he wasn't sure if the king had discovered his identity, he and Sandy could never be together. The King of the West was never going to approve of their relationship. No, I won't let you leave. How can you leave like this? I won't allow you to leave. Sandy was stunned and could no longer hold herself back. She threw herself into James's arms and hugged him tightly. Tears started streaming down her face. How can you do this? Don't tell me I have no place in your heart. If you're not worth my concern, then who is? James suddenly felt bad. Before he knew it, he was hugging her back. Don't cry, I didn't mean to upset you, James said, sighing. You did upset me. Sandy looked at him with tears in her eyes. Ever since I met you, everything in my world has changed. It turns out that the world can be so wonderful. Every day, when I open my eyes, you're the one I'm most excited to see. Every night before I close my eyes, you're the one on my mind. Thinking about how happy I was to spend time with you that day. Thinking about how you were able to do anything. You always surprise people. It makes me feel safer than I ever have before. It makes me understand a lot of things like my own shortcomings. I also know what kind of life I want now. But this is how you treat me. Don't you think it's cruel? At this point, Sandy could not hold it in anymore. She leaned on James's shoulder and sobbed quietly. She'd never bared her soul like this in her life, but she really couldn't hold back in front of James anymore. She didn't know what he would think, but she had to say her piece. James was touched, but he didn't know what to say. He never intended to lead this girl on, but unknowingly, he ended up doing that anyway. James gently patted her shoulder, sighing slightly. He sat down and looked at Sandy's pretty face, and then he said seriously, I know what you mean, but it's impossible for us to be together. We're from different worlds, and our statuses are too different. It's not meant to be. Even if we are from different worlds, we could still be together in this one. Why can't we? Any problem can be solved, Sandy said stubbornly, her eyes still red. Some things can't be changed, James sighed. I already have a wife, in fact, more than one. Can you accept this? Even if you can, your father won't accept his daughter becoming a concubine. You already have wives? Sandy's heart sank and she muttered, Right, you're such an outstanding man. There must be so many women who want to be with you. Now do you understand that we're really not a match? James said frankly. Maybe I am just a chapter in your story. I'll disappear from your life and you'll soon forget about me. If it's not meant to be, why force it? Is that why you keep a distance from me? Sandy asked softly, taking James's hand. That's one of the reasons. There are many other things that I can't tell you about. It won't do you any good to know. James smiled and said, I don't want to let you get hurt. What James said was true. It was rare to see such a pure girl. She wasn't scheming or had any ulterior motives. When he was with her, he felt very relaxed. Otherwise, James wouldn't have given her the chance to refine heavenly artifact weapons and teach her how to refine weapons. Although he and the King of the West stood on two different sides, he wouldn't do anything to hurt Sandy. She was innocent. Sandy's pretty face turned red. She said with surprise, You're concerned about me, and everything you do is to prevent me from getting hurt, right? Well, then I'll ask you one question. We've been together for so many days. Have you ever liked me even a little bit? Sandy's face showed expectation. Of course I did, James said with a bitter smile. He was only human. How could he be heartless? It would be a lie to say that he didn't like her. If one day he went to war with the King of the West, what would Sandy feel? Really? Sandy asked again. Yeah, it's true. "Sir, I knew it. You're not as heartless as you people think. It's because you have feelings for me that you treat me like this." Sandy threw herself into his arms again. She whispered, If I said that I don't mind you being with another woman, would you accept me?" James's jaw dropped. He looked at this delicate beauty and didn't know what to say. He was a confident man, but he wasn't arrogant enough to think that all the beautiful women in the world liked him. But this was the king's daughter, a princess. How could he answer this question? For a moment, James felt his stomach churn. Sandy looked at James in a daze and smiled through tears. She said, "All right, let's not talk about this anymore. You're still injured. I came here to give you some medicine. Here you go." She handed a delicate glass bottle to James. Seeing Sandy change the topic, he heaved a sigh of relief and asked, "I have this medicine too. You can keep it for yourself. After all, you should know that I am an apothecary." "That's not what you think. This stuff is much better than the pill. If you just take a little bit of it, you will recover from all your injuries. Besides, it will help you break through to the next level." Sandy handed the bottle over to James as if she were presenting a treasure. She said, "Quick, open it and take a look. You must treat your injuries. You still have a battle ahead. You can't go on stage with injuries." "What is this?" James was slightly curious. When he opened the bottle and smelled its contents, his heart suddenly sank. He blurted out, "This is the legendary Immortal Dew." "You know it too?" Sandy nodded and said with a smile, "My father gave it to me, but I don't usually need it, so I'm giving it to you. I think you'll have a better use for it. Besides, if you drink this small amount of Immortal Dew, perhaps it will allow you to gain a lot of insights in advance." Seeing Sandy's pure gaze, James smiled bitterly and said, "If your father gave it to you, it's not a good idea for me to take it. Do you know how valuable this Immortal Dew is? It could be used to refine pills that exceed the heavenly pill level. Me drinking it would truly be a waste." "Damn, James, that's Immortal Dew. If you don't give it to me," Kenny Lee was filled with envy. He told James telepathically, "If I had this thing, I might advance again. I can't believe this girl had such a treasure. This thing is much more precious than the universe profound fruit." "Go away. Why do you interrupt everything? What do you want from me?" James's face darkened as he replied to Kenny. "What do you mean? Obviously, what benefits me is good for you as well. This girl's deeply in love with you, and you really don't appreciate what you have. Even a princess likes you," Kenny Lee said grumpily. James was speechless. "How could it be wasted? It's not a waste to give it to you." Sandy looked shy as she said softly, "Take it and use it. No matter how valuable it is, your life is more important." James shook his head with a smile. He didn't refuse anymore and said, "All right, I'll accept this Immortal Dew. If you want to concoct a higher grade pill in the future, I'll help." "Then I'll be waiting for you." Sandy smiled happily when she saw James accept her gift. At this moment, a gust of wind blew past, and the candle flame instantly went out. The entire room was suddenly pitch black. James's heart suddenly sank. He quickly hugged Sandy and rolled aside with her. The table in front of James exploded, leaving a deep ravine in the wall. In order to protect a martial cultivator's emotions, the room was reinforced by a formation. Otherwise, it would have completely collapsed under this strike. Sandy was startled. Unable to control herself, she opened her mouth and was about to scream, but James still had perfect vision even in the dark. Seeing that Sandy was about to make a noise, he panicked and shut her up with a kiss. Feeling the electric shock, Sandy's eyes suddenly opened wide. She was stunned. The realization made her dizzy. He kissed her. Yes, he kissed her. James didn't care that much at that moment. Seeing Sandy stop in her tracks, he gently moved and held his breath. He suppressed his aura to the lowest point and looked at the door with a serious face. At this moment, James's mind was filled with many different thoughts. He wasn't sure whether the person who attacked them was here for him or Sandy. When Sandy was younger, someone had plotted against her and made her fall into a coma, freezing her for decades. So now, it was also possible that these people were back for her. But James thought that these people were more likely to be here for him. He had deliberately concealed his injuries earlier. These people know about them. He didn't know if Sandy's bodyguards were there. If they were to fight, Sandy's safety would be the most important thing. Sandy, don't move and don't make a sound. I will lead them away. Take the opportunity to leave as quickly as you can, James said to her telepathically. Don't worry about me and don't call for reinforcements. I will handle this myself. Also, this is the talisman and print I made. It can be triggered by using the genuine sheet. If you're caught off guard, use this. Even a 6th layer of heavenly human stage will be severely injured. Don't think that they won't dare to touch you. Only a few people know that you're the king's daughter. You better escape this place as soon as possible. These people are most likely here to deal with me. If you leave unnoticed, no one will touch you. Then, what about you? You're still injured. Sandy quickly recovered from the kiss and asked telepathically. They are far from being able to kill me, James quickly explained. Wait until I lure them away and then you escape. Don't look back. James didn't care whether Sandy agreed with him or not. He got up and moved quickly. He threw a bunch of talisman and prints out of the house. Countless flames exploded, setting off waves of scorching fire that swept in all directions. Following the miserable screams, several men were instantly burned to death by the purple flame. James turned rapidly. He was fast like an arrow as he rushed out. A few seconds later, his heart sank. There was no ambush waiting for him outside. What was going on? If those were the Eastern experts, they would never give him a chance to catch his breath. There was no reason for this to happen. When James thought of this, his heart skipped a beat. He had a very bad feeling about this. This is bad. If those people aren't waiting for me, they must be here for Sandy. At this moment, there was a huge explosion. Purple flames surged out from the windows. Damn it, James cursed in his heart. He didn't care about anything else. He opened his clairvoyance ability and rushed back into the hotel. In the room, he saw Sandy staring at the masked man in front of her. Her pretty face turned pale and she was shaking from fear. It's you. Was it you who attacked me years ago? I didn't think that you'd still remember me. The old man in the black mask smirked and said coldly, I didn't expect the king to save you back then, but this time, ye will be too late. You're just a kid. Don't run around meeting your lover when you have nothing better to do. This world is very dangerous. Did your father teach you? I will take you to a fun place where you all enjoy a thrilling life. The old man said with a sinister laugh as he was about to grab Sandy with his skinny hand. Don't touch her. James teleported in front of the old man. Without hesitation, he unleashed his strongest power. Wind and thunder extinguishing finger. Sandy was glad to see James come back for her. She was tightly holding onto her shirt, very nervous. Kid, I was going to deal with you later, but since you are here, I will deal with you too. A black vital spirit burst out from the old man, and then he waved his hand and sent a strike at James. This is the 9th layer of heavenly human stage, James cried out in shock. His face changed drastically and he turned around. His indestructible tyrannical body was fully condensed, and he moved to the side. James was sent flying and crashed into the wall, creating a huge hole in it. He spurted out a mouthful of blood. "Oh, this is the beast chi. Are you from the beast world? That's impossible. How could anyone from the beast world be here?" "Whoa, young man. You do have some strength. You didn't even die after taking 80% of my strength." The old man looked at James coldly. "I don't have time to waste on you. Since you are a man with great talent, I'll just plant a beast seed on you." Without giving James any chance to resist, the old man clawed at him. The one soul strength seed was sent into James's mind. James spat out a mouthful of black blood. His eyes became dull, and he fell to the floor. "James!" Sandy was very worried. She felt like her heart was stabbed by a knife. She quickly got up and threw herself to James's side. "What a wholesome couple." The old man grinned sarcastically. "Well, don't worry, I didn't kill him. I only planted a beast seed." "You should know what a beast seed is, right? If you plant one into a human body, they won't be able to resist you at all. Their entire person will become a beast, and at the same time, your strength will increase exponentially. It was your luck that your beast seed got expelled, but this time you won't be so lucky. If you expect your daddy to save you, that's impossible. He's probably tied down by now. If you were by your father's side, we wouldn't dare to attack, but once you are out of his sight, no one will be able to save you." "Little girl, don't resist." Sandy's face was pale, and she was extremely scared. Her nails had pierced into the flesh of her palm, and she didn't even feel any pain. She had experienced this old man's attack once before, and knew what she was going to face. That meant having her mind imprisoned and living a life worse than death. "Now's the time. Kenny, go!" James shouted. A ball of flickering purple light shot towards the old man's chest at an extreme speed. "Oh, this flame!" The old man's heart skipped a beat. He quickly withdrew his hand in fear and was about to fly back. "Concept of wind. Suspended. Throwing wind at you point," James cried out loudly. The old man felt as if he were caught by something, causing his body to freeze. This moment, James, who was lying on the floor, suddenly had a bright light flash in his eyes. Purple flames intertwined in his hand, forming a huge awl that pierced the old man. "Chaotic fire tornado. The will of destruction." "Damn it. What kind of flame is this? Why does it make my beast chi tremble?" The old man was in shock as he dodged Kenny's attack. The beast chi on his body surged wildly as he suddenly waved his fist ruthlessly and smashed it towards James. "You bastard! Get lost!" He couldn't understand why this guy was so conscious and wasn't affected at all. How was this possible? Did his beast seed lose its effectiveness? There was no time for him to think as there was a huge energy explosion. James spurted out a mouthful of blood and his spirit weakened, but he didn't let go. He stared at the old man with a fierce look in his eyes. He forcefully suppressed the severe injuries on his body, and with all of his strength, he shouted, "Soul-suppressing nail!" "What? How can this thing still exist?" When the old man saw the rusty nail and the flaming tornado, his face was filled with fear. He no longer cared about James and wanted to escape. But under James's desperate effort, the purple flame burned through the old man's beast chi and nailed the soul-suppressing nail into his body. Bullets! The old man was ruthlessly thrown onto the ground, unable to get up again. But that old face was terrifyingly pale. His aura had withered, and even his beast chi could not be controlled. It was completely suppressed by the nail. The soul-suppressing nail was the bane of all beast creatures. After being pierced by it, he was simply unable to move. Seeing that his opponent was nailed, James coughed twice and fell to the ground. He kept spitting out blood and his aura was extremely weak. His opponent was a 9th layer of heavenly human stage expert and not an ordinary one. Although his purple flame was able to suppress the man's beast chi, he still got severely injured. If he didn't have the indestructible tyrannical body protecting him, he'd be dead. James, how are you? Don't scare me. Sandy held James's head and placed it on her chest. She looked at the blood that kept flowing out of his mouth and started crying. Her heart ached for him. As an expert, she could clearly feel that terrible condition James was in. If this continued, he would definitely die. Looking at Sandy's pretty face right in front of him, James laughed dryly. He struggled to move his hand to say, "Don't cry. I'm not dead yet. I'm glad that you're fine." The corner of James's mouth curved, but his eyes were becoming more and more blurry. He tried to open them, but found that he couldn't see Sandy's face anymore. And then he felt something drop on his face and completely lost consciousness. Iron City, King's Mansion, Sandy's room. Sandy stared blankly at the man on her bed. Her palm gently rested on his pale face. Once again, she felt like her heart was stabbed by a knife. She felt guilty. That old man clearly targeted her. James had left earlier, and if he didn't come back for her, he'd be fine now. It was all her fault. For the first time in her life, she knew what it felt like to feel heartache for a loved one, and it was suffocating. Am I really the source of all your troubles? If it weren't for me, you wouldn't be this hurt, Sandy said with sadness in her voice. Sandy, don't think like that. This is what those people from the beast world want you to feel. None of it is your fault. The king looked at James with a heavy gaze. It was precisely because of James that his daughter secretly ran out. But it was also he who got his daughter safely back. He knew that it had been more than a day or two since those people had set their eyes on his daughter. If James hadn't shown up, they would have succeeded in their attack. It was only a matter of time. It was undeniable that James had helped him a lot. But James is in this state because of me. Sandy started crying again. She looked at the king with grief and said, "Father, I beg you, please save him. Please don't kill him. If he dies, I don't know how I'll be able to live." Her father asked, surprised, "Sandy, why are you saying that? Why would I kill him?" "Father, you don't have to lie to me. I heard your conversation with Uncle Donald. I know that he's the human emperor's successor, and I know that you want to take his inheritance. More than 90% of the people in this world want to kill him." Sandy bit her lower lip as she said that. She finally knew what complications James had talked about. She also now knew that James wanted to ask her what would happen if her father wanted to kill him. She knew why James kept saying that they weren't meant to be together. She was glad to know James was thinking of her. Everything he did was for her sake. That was why he treated her this way. If he wanted to, he would have been able to control her a long time ago and threaten her father, but he didn't. Instead, he risked his life to protect her. This made her feel even more uneasy. King also blamed himself in his heart for not paying attention to what he was saying and letting his daughter hear. But Sandy already knew the truth, so there was no way to hide it anymore. The king sighed and said, "You're right. He is indeed the human emperor's successor. I just found out about it. For so many days, Donald and I have been thinking about what to do, but we haven't thought of a good solution. I didn't expect you to fall in love with the guy. Sandy, Do you know what this human emperor successor means to me and the other kings? I don't. Sandy shook her head, still in tears. She looked at the king with red eyes and said, but what I know is, Dad, even if you obtain the inheritance of the human emperor, even if your strength surpasses your current level, so what? Your strength is sufficient. It's enough for you not to fear anyone. Why do you want to become even stronger? Dad, you're not just one person. You have parents, a child, a wife, and more family members. Only with people we love around us can we live a happy life. If in the end you stand at the peak of the world, having unmatched strength, yet you don't have a single person by your side who's genuine with you, how miserable would you be? Is this what you want? If you're a person who pursues this, then why do you love your mother so much? Why do you love me so much? And why do you value your friendship with Donald so much? That's right. Sandy makes sense. Donald took over the conversation and sighed. My friend, he said, there are some things that I wanted to say, but I didn't know how to. Now Sandy has said it. I'll only say a few words, so don't be angry. The technique that you cultivate is the most emotional type. It's similar to Sandy's red dust emotion web. It's precisely because you have feelings that you let your strength increase very quickly, ever since you were young. But in the past 2,000 years, the competition for inheritance in 4 kingdoms has become increasingly intense. To not lose to one of the other kings, you had to also fight for it. Ask yourself, in these 2,000 years, did the king level come to an end, or did your state of mind subtly cheat? The king's heart sank, and he smiled wryly. He paused for a moment, contemplating, and then something occurred to him. Indeed, after so many years, his strength hadn't improved at all. Was it really because he was at the king's level? It definitely wasn't that. At the end of the day, it was his mentality that had changed, causing him to have a knot in his heart. Instinctively, he thought that only the inheritance of the human emperor could allow him to advance, and without it, his strength would be limited. My friend, Donald said slowly, those who have reached our level should know that the inheritance of the human emperor is selective. Those who can obtain it are all geniuses among men. They possess heaven's will. Even if they die, how can we take the inheritance? And even if we can get it, will it work? Many people know this, but they can't resist the temptation. Don't be one of them. I know. Badao sighed deeply. He felt a warm current rise from his energy center. A powerful aura suddenly burst out from his body. You've just untied a knot in your heart. Is this a breakthrough? You've already reached the king level, but you could still break through to a higher level. Why can't I break through? The king rolled his eyes and smiled. There's no end to evolution in martial arts. You're right. My state of mind has indeed changed. I should have thought of this long ago, but I only understood it now. The desire for profit was captivating. You're right. Sandy, I understand now. It's all thanks to what you said that I was able to come to my senses. Don't worry. I won't hurt the man that you love. I know it wasn't easy for you to fall in love with someone, but I haven't properly spoken to him yet. When he wakes up, I'll tell him that he'll have to fight for you. Don't forget you're the princess. Thank you, Father. Sandy cried, tears of joy, and a heavy weight lifted off her chest. Now that her father wasn't going to kill James anymore, the most difficult thing was to save him. His injuries are pretty serious. It's a miracle that he didn't die after being hit by a 9th layer of Heavenly Human stage. It will be very difficult for him to recover. The king looked at James, who was lying on the bed, and said hesitantly, if we let him recover, we will need to prepare a lot of things. I'm afraid that it won't be quick. Father, will he lose his strength? His condition is very bad, Sandy asked, worried. It's hard to say. We can only do what we should do. The rest will depend on his luck. But Dowd shook his head and smiled bitterly. Given James's current condition, there was still a chance for him to survive, but it was virtually impossible for him to recover to his peak strength. He couldn't tell Sandy that. He was deeply afraid that his daughter wouldn't be able to take this blow. At this moment, Donald suddenly exclaimed. He looked at James, who was lying on the bed in disbelief, and blurted out, "What the hell? What kind of monster is this kid? Why is he already recovering from his injuries? How is this possible?" The king quickly turned his head. He was stunned for a moment before he came to a realization. He said with a smile, "I told you that this guy wouldn't die so easily. I forgot that he was a heavenly pill master. He must have taken an immortal golden pill before this. When he got a fatal injury, the pill was activated. No wonder he isn't dead yet and is automatically recovering from his injuries." "Immortal golden pill?" Donald was stunned and muttered, "No wonder. No wonder. Like I said, only immortal golden pills can do this. This heavenly pill has a very strong life-saving ability." "So, James is fine now." Sandy was overjoyed. "Silly girl, don't worry. He's fine now. With this immortal golden pill, this tribulation will become his opportunity. When he wakes up, I'm afraid he's going to advance again." The king shook his head and smiled. "All right, take good care of him. Right now the mansion is in a mess, and I still have to deal with it. Those people are very capable. They sent out so many experts, restraining Donald and me." "All right, father. Continue with your work. Don't worry about me," Sandy said with a smile and wiped away her happy tears. After her father left, Sandy looked at James, who was lying on the bed in a daze. No one knew what she was thinking about as a sweet smile appeared on her lips. At this moment, James's consciousness was completely immersed in his spiritual sea. He heaved a heavy sigh of relief. "Okay, so, all right. Fortunately, I had taken an immortal golden pill in Selmatin. Otherwise, I would have really died this time. But taking this pill was a waste. I wanted to reach the 6th layer of heavenly human state by relying on the power of this pill." "You should be happy. It saved your life, but you're still being picky," the Alaric Lee said. "This situation was very dangerous. The opponent was a 9th layer of heavenly human stage, and without the soul-suppressing nail, you would be a corpse by now." "Yeah, fortunately, the old man hadn't broken through the void yet. Otherwise, the soul-suppressing nail might not work on him," James said. "Looks like after I recover, I have to refine that soul-suppressing nail properly. I really didn't expect that someone from the beast world would show up here. What exactly is going on?" James was filled with fear. "I don't know, but the King of the West definitely knows something about it. You can ask him when the time comes. Those bastards from the beast world can come to Small Cloud Heaven. What else is possible? But I'm sure there aren't many of them. Otherwise, we wouldn't have to go through so much trouble," the Alaric Lee explained. "If that's the case, it's still all right." James heaved a sigh of relief. Suddenly, he thought of something and became nervous again. "Where am I now? I'm not in the mansion, am I? If the king is here, I might be exposed." "You've already been found out a long time ago." The Alaric Lee rolled his eyes and said, "I've heard their conversation, and don't worry. That little girlfriend of yours loves you very much still. She made the king change his mind. It looks like he's going to be your father-in-law. I'm afraid that the king will be on your side from now on." "Okay. Well, that's good news." James felt relieved. "I have to focus on recovering from my injuries and breaking through to the 6th heavenly layer. And once I reach that, I'll have more strength to protect myself." The Alaric Lee reminded him, "After reaching level 6, take your time. The comprehension is also here. If you forcefully break through in the future, it will result in insufficient comprehension. The 7th heavenly layer belongs to the category of high rank of heavenly human stage, so it won't be that easy to reach. I know, James said with a smile. I've been advancing very quickly. In less than half a month, I've broken through to the 5th layer from the 3rd one, and I will soon reach the 6th layer. If I don't consolidate it, there will be endless problems later on. After a few hours, James finally woke up. His body had fully recovered and the 6th layer aura exploded from his body. James, you're better now. This is great. I was so worried about you. Sandy was overjoyed when she saw him wake up. She threw herself on him and hugged his neck tightly, refusing to let go. I still have some trump cards that can save my life. I'm not easy to kill. James smiled and patted her shoulder. That's right. Father said you'll wake soon. He asked you to go and find him, but don't worry. He won't hurt you. The King of the West is looking for me? James wasn't surprised at all. He shook his head and said with a bitter smile, You should pray that I can come back alive. You'll be fine. Trust me, Sandy guaranteed. He already knows who you are, but he won't do anything to you anymore. Well, that's not why. James looked at Sandy and said helplessly, I hope he knows that I didn't kidnap his only precious daughter. What are you talking about? Sandy laughed. She stomped her feet and said, Go, hurry. If Father hears you, you'll be in trouble. All right, I'll go. If something happens to me, you will have to come save me. With a faint smile on his face, James slowly walked into the king's office. Only he and Donald were there. When they saw that James had fully recovered and even broken through to the 6th layer of Heavenly Human stage, they were both quite shocked. Although they'd guessed that James could break through to the 6th layer, they took a deep breath when they saw it with their own eyes. After all, the immortal golden pill would only give him the opportunity to break through. It was not a guarantee. Greetings, King of the West, Sir Donald III, James said with a smile, neither servile nor overbearing. Looking at the human emperor's successor, Badow's domineering eyes narrowed. He sized James up, and a murderous aura burst out from his body. He said coldly, James, you're very bold. As a human emperor's successor, you openly showed up in the Western Kingdom and even kidnapped my daughter. That's not true. James knew that the king was trying to intimidate him. He smiled and said seriously, Human Emperor is the faith of the entire race. He has done his best for the development of humans. Naturally, he should be respected by everyone, although I'm far from the height of the Human Emperor level. As his heir, I'm proud. I'm also fighting for everyone's right to have happiness. I believe that I am capable of achieving it. And as an honest man, I haven't stolen anything or kidnapped anyone. Why can't I openly come to the Western Kingdom? Do I have to hide? It's those people who have ill intentions, not me. As for your daughter, I didn't kidnap her. I never lied to her from the beginning. I knew that you might want to kill me, but I still saved her. Maybe one day we'll fight. But Sandy's innocent. Badow stared at James for a long moment, and then suddenly smiled. The tense atmosphere instantly lifted. I see why Sandy has fallen in love with you. What you said makes sense. This is also the reason why you're safe and won't be harmed here. They say that the King of the West is brutal, but it doesn't seem to be true. James grinned. At least you're much better than those sanctimonious guys. But sir, you didn't ask me to come here just to say that, did you? Of course not. The king straightened his face and said, Let's cut the crap. This matter is related to the beast world. As human emperor's successor, you know that the portal of the beast world is about to be opened. How much do you know about that world? Tell the truth, I really don't know much. James smiled bitterly and said, I've only been in the small cloud heaven for a few months. What happened to those people from the beast down? Isn't the entrance to the beast world still open? Why are they still living on this side? Weren't they killed? These are not good people. I don't think anyone will leave them alive on purpose. Although the portal of the beast world hasn't been opened yet, those people from the beast world were only chased out, not killed. And now they're hiding within a 1,000-mile radius of the portal, and there is no one determined to kill them, the king explained. You should know that human nature is greedy. No one would care about such a thing before it threatens their own interests. Well, take me, for example. Although I'm doing this for my kingdom's sake, I know that the people of the beast world couldn't attack. I wouldn't bother with them. But I don't understand. Why capture Sandy? James asked doubtfully. And what is that beast seed of theirs? Why did they give it to Sandy? I have a feeling that this matter isn't as simple as it seems. Well, they captured Sandy to threaten me. Among the 4 kingdoms, my weakness is the most obvious, and that is my daughter. They want to use her to control me. If the 4 kingdoms of Small Cloud Heaven are able to control the king's power, then the portal of the beast world will be broken once it's activated, Bedao said slowly. As for the so-called beast seed, that's the main point. It's something that can be only condensed by the experts of the beast Tao who have shattered the void, but it will take a very long time to do. The beast seed could affect a person's soul and control their thoughts. It contains a very strong beast chi that could make a person quickly lose themselves and never wake up. Years ago, Sandy was implanted with the beast seed and lost consciousness. When she realized that she was about to lose her true nature, she had no choice but to freeze it, suppress the beast chi, and use Heaven Pill to save herself. According to Sandy, you were implanted with a beast seed as well. How could you not be affected? I'm in a special situation, James said. I didn't use the purple flame on that man, which made him relax his vigilance. When his beast seed entered my mind, it was incinerated by my purple flame, so it couldn't affect me at all. You've already interrogated him, right? Did you get anything useful? There was something, Bedao said in a deep voice. I don't know if you've heard of an organization called the Expert Assembly. Expert Assembly. James's heart sank as if he'd grasped onto something. His mind was racing. Wasn't this Expert Assembly the mysterious organization that Samson Barrett told him about back in America? His son had been lured in by them to threaten Barrett. According to what he said, Barrett's son must have been implanted with a beast seed back then, but the seed wasn't very powerful, or it wouldn't have been able to cure him. What are you thinking? The king asked anxiously. I know about this Expert Assembly. If I'm not wrong, this organization is luring in the younger generation of experts under the excuse of increasing their strength quickly to trick some young and talented people with powerful backgrounds. After that, they become their most loyal dogs, James said in a deep voice. The son of a friend of mine was kidnapped by them. Over 1,000 years have passed since. What they did wasn't a small matter. Perhaps the Expert Assembly is a spy for the beast world on our side. Well, this Expert Assembly has always been mysterious, but it's indeed a human organization. My intelligence department has also found this out, the king explained. What we're most worried about right now is the cooperation between the Expert Assembly and the beast world. This time they failed, but who knows if they will have another chance. Bedao became more and more riled up as he spoke. They had attacked his daughter twice now. He couldn't stand it any longer. The human and beast worlds are working together. Would they really have the guts to do that? James narrowed his eyes and said, maybe there are indeed some people who are heartless. It is what it is. There's nothing we can do about it. The king threw the soul-suppressing nail to James and said, I'm giving this thing to you because it's only in your hands that it can unleash its full power. In terms of who in the Small Cloud Heaven could possibly defeat the beast world, you're our only certain option. The others will only seek benefits for themselves. Don't think so highly of me. I only want to live for my family to not be harmed, like everyone else. After all, the small cloud heaven is broke. The human world won't be able to escape either, James said with a shrug as he put away the soul-suppressing nail. But Dow said with a domineering smile, "Putting everything else aside, if you dare to hurt my daughter, I might attack you and steal your inheritance after all." "Your daughter and I really have nothing to do with each other," James said in a serious tone. "Don't play dumb with me. Sandy's overbearing and cold," he scoffed. "You can continue with the ranking match tomorrow. If you don't get first place, I will teach you a lesson." James walked out, feeling tired. He really didn't feel any romantic attraction to Sandy, although he admitted that she was beautiful and likable. But this wasn't equal to love. He also genuinely wasn't looking for this kind of relationship. But her father was the king of the West, Ahmed Badaw. What should he do? If he dared to say that he didn't like his daughter, he might compromise his safety. The next day, the ranking match continued. Yesterday, James and Justin's battle arena was crushed and destroyed and had to be rebuilt overnight. Second match, James Lee versus Carson Keene, Mr. Reeves announced in the Marshall Arena. "I haven't heard that name in a long time." James walked onto the stage and smirked. He looked at Carson, who was standing below the stage, and said with a playful smile, "I never thought that you'd come back here. No wonder I haven't seen you before. Do you want to come up and fight, or do you want to admit defeat?" As soon as he said that, a cold smile appeared on Carson's face. Without any hesitation, he went on stage and said calmly, "It's not my character to admit defeat. Put away your little tricks." After saying that, Carson sent another message to James, but telepathically, and said sarcastically, "Don't think that I don't know what happened last night. I didn't expect you to survive the attack of a ninth layer of heavenly human stage expert. But you must seriously be injured right now, right? After Justin, you must be seriously injured. How much more strength do you have at this point? It's already a miracle that you're alive at all. I advise you, admit defeat, or I might not be able to hold myself back and might end up killing you." "Huh. Did you also plan to attack me last night? Looks like someone else beat you to it." James narrowed his eyes and replied telepathically, "I have some good news for you. I've already wiped your family out back in America. Yes, I've killed them all. Didn't see you there. It's a pity that I didn't expect to meet you here. Let's settle old and new grudges today. I'm just too kind to let you be alone in this world. I'll help you reunite with your loved ones." "You bastard. You've gone too far." Carson was furious. The killing aura on his body had already solidified. He'd left America ahead of time. He didn't know that his entire family was now gone. Carson couldn't hold back any longer. The third layer of heavenly human stage aura on his body burst out with a loud bang. "Oh, third layer. You really do have some skill. No wonder you've entered the small cloud heaven ahead of time and you were trained by the head of the Keen. It wasn't easy for you to reach this stage with your third layer cultivation beings. But do you really want to defeat me with this little strength?" James crossed his arms over his chest and looked at his opponent with sarcasm as if he found it amusing. "Do you think you still have the strength of a seventh layer of heavenly human stage? You must be delusional." Carson smiled coldly and swung his sword, aiming at James's heart. "You're just a child, short-tempered and reactive." James casually stretched out two fingers and grabbed Carson's sword mid-swing. "What? How's this possible? How are you so strong? I've seen you get beaten to the brink of death with my own eyes. You didn't have much life left in you. They had to carry you away." Carson turned pale, terrified. "Oh, so you were there." James said with a smile. That's right, I was injured. But I'm happy to report I recovered quickly in just one night. Do you have a problem with that? You bastard! You'll go to hell! Carson was shocked. He gritted his teeth, and his genuine chi in his hand exploded. He unleashed his sword intent with all his strength and thrust it at James once again. What a naive child. James didn't move. He just looked at Carson indifferently. Purple flame ignited on his fingers. The concept of destruction burst out, burning all the energy that Carson had gathered on the sword. Damn it! Damn it! My genuine chi! Seeing that the genuine chi he'd condensed was completely destroyed, Carson was now extremely terrified. With all his strength, he forcefully pulled the genuine chi behind him. What are you doing? Are you trying to pull out your sword? If you want to pull it out, just tell me. I'll let you have it, James advised earnestly. You just need to communicate, okay? You have a mouth. Use it. I'm an honest person. If you say you want your sword back, I'll let it go. Everyone present felt like they were watching a circus show. Why was James mocking his opponent so relentlessly? Besides, Carson's sword was a high-ranking spirit weapon. How could James catch it with just 2 fingers? Had James become stronger overnight? You bastard! How dare you insult me? I will not let you walk out of here alive. Carson was about to explode from anger, but no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't pull out the sword, and it made his face turn red. Look at you, so stubborn. It's just a few words. Why don't you say it? James shook his head. Kid, if you don't know how to use a sword, then don't use it. Besides, it isn't that good of a weapon. Now, what are you trying to do? I can see that you're struggling, so I'll help you. Great strength finger. Break. The energy between James's finger exploded. In front of everyone's shocked eyes, the high-ranked spirit weapon crumbled like a rotten wooden stick. There was a crisp sound as Carson was about to pull his sword out of the ground. But the moment the sword broke, he fell and stared at the broken weapon in shock. It was broken. This was a high-ranking spiritual weapon, not just a piece of metal, but it was broken by 2 fingers? How was this possible? What did I see? Is this guy even human? That's impossible. Even if it was a fierce collision with a weapon below the heavenly artifact, it still wouldn't break. But we saw it with our own eyes. How did he do it? Everyone was in shock. What they saw was beyond their comprehension. How did this spirit artifact become so fragile? Donald, did you see that? The king asked, laughing. Of course, nothing can escape my eyes. Donald smiled and said, he used the purple flame to burn most of the genuine chi in the sword body. Without the protection of the absolute genuine chi, the sword body wouldn't be as solid. But even so, he was able to break a high-ranked spirit weapon with 2 fingers. This is unbelievable. Even I wouldn't dare to try such a thing, right? You only saw part of it. The king narrowed his eyes and said, that kid's skill is brilliant. Don't forget who he is. Heavenly Artifact Master. He clearly knows the weakness of the weapon. That's why he broke it so easily. I forgot. He is a Heavenly Artifact Master. Donald's heart trembled and his eyes burned with a passion. He hastily said to Badao, quick, get your daughter to marry him so he becomes one of us. This way he can modify my weapons for free. My own Heavenly Artifact weapon isn't very convenient and doesn't match my strength. In the arena, Carson looked at James in horror. His legs were shaking. He wanted to stand up but found that he could not stand at all. You thought that you were very powerful, so you recklessly tried to provoke me. I don't want to waste my time on you because I don't think you're a match for me. And you're not worth my attention. The corner of James' mouth curled up slightly. He walked to Carson's side and casually threw the tip of the broken sword to his feet. He moved closer to Carson's ear and whispered, "Look at the broken sword in your hand. Do you think your head is sturdier than this spiritual weapon? Get lost. Try not to show your face in front of me again. Next time I see you, I will kill you." Well, yes, Carson's sword technique is superb. Thank you for letting me win. Don't forget our agreement. James's voice suddenly rose when he said the last sentence. Although it wasn't very loud, it was heard by all those who were interested. Looking at James's back as he left, Carson immediately recovered his senses. His heart skipped a beat and he shouted, "Bastard, what are you saying? When did I make an agreement with you? Don't you dare slander me." "Yeah, what agreement do we have? Did you hear wrongly?" James looked at Carson, puzzled. He smiled and didn't say anything else. He just turned around and left. After James left, Carson's face changed dramatically. Sure enough, when he looked at the people from the Eastern Kingdom again, all of them were looking at him with hostility. Carson felt as if he'd been drenched with ice water. He finally knew why James didn't kill him. He wanted to ruin his name. What a vicious heart, a wild ambition. What right did he have to do this? Carson wasn't stupid to begin with. He could easily imagine what now awaited. Perhaps everyone in the Eastern Kingdom would suspect him, thinking that he and James had made a transaction. Then they would treat him as a traitor and kill him. "This guy just killed someone in an invisible way. Carson is finished now," Badal said with a smile, narrowing his eyes. "With such intelligence, this batch of human emperor-level warrior is truly formidable." "This kid is really good at playing this game. But if we can all see that this is his scheme, others might be able to notice it too. After all, none of us are fools," Donald said with a smile. "You're wrong about that." The king shook his head and smiled. "You still don't understand the human heart. Even if everyone thought that this was James's plan, there would always be people who would suspect Carson and cast him out. Even the head of his clan would isolate this guy and not support him anymore. So, Carson will be ostracized by everyone, and his life will never be the same. This might be exactly what James wants." "Damn it. I have no idea how Carson deserved this, but James is ruthless," Donald swore. "You won't be able to understand what he's trying to do. He's worthy of the title of Human Emperor's successor," the king said in an impressed tone. This battle had no suspense for most of them. They were only shocked by James's strength. But to the people of the East, it was a shocking revelation. Last night, they'd clearly seen James being taken away with severe injuries, but it had only been one night. How could he have recovered so quickly? What was going on? It seemed like their plan was going to be put on hold again. After confirming James's strength, his opponents forfeited in the last few battles. They had no desire to fight him at all. James had beaten Justin, who was a 7th layer of Heavenly Human Stage, half to death, and crippled his opponent. If they challenged him, they might not get out of it alive. They might as well just admit defeat and avoid a beating. "The final championship will be held tomorrow. The battle will be between James Lee and Tobias Wagner." Mr. Reeves looked at the audience and then at James and Tobias. He slowly said, "Do the two of you have any objections?" Sure enough, there were no objections. The championship was to be decided between these two people. James's strength was clearly great. He defeated Justin Padilla, a 7th layer of Heavenly Human Stage expert. As for Tobias, he was the champion of the last competition. No one dared to say who would win between these two people, but everyone was filled with anticipation. Tobias took a step forward and sighed helplessly. There's no need to compete anymore. I admit defeat. I'm definitely not his match, so there's no need to fight anymore. What? Tobias Wagner admitted defeat? That's impossible. Tobias Wagner is very arrogant. How could he admit defeat? I must have heard it wrong. He admitted defeat before even fighting. What's going on? But it makes sense. Last time Tobias and Justin were equally strong, and he only beat Justin by half a move. Then Justin was easily defeated by James. Tobias must know that he's no match for James, and he doesn't want to lose face. But he won't even fight? Oh, that's so disappointing, isn't it? Mr. Reeves was also stunned. He looked at Tobias in shock and said, Are you sure you want to admit defeat? With your strength, you might have the chance to win. James looked at Tobias and frowned. What was this guy trying to do? I'm sure. I really don't have the strength to fight. I withdraw from the competition. Tobias sighed. At the end of the day, he didn't want to give up. He was a very proud man. But this monster in front of him had the chi of a true dragon and clearly had some kind of superhuman. His legs trembled in fear. How was he supposed to fight this monster? He couldn't figure it out. Why was a human carrying a dragon chi? He didn't have the slightest desire to compete with him. This wasn't because he wasn't strong enough, but because the grade of James's bloodline was too high, and the suppression was too strong. Coincidentally, he had the dragon sword bloodline, so he was firmly suppressed by James's aura. Mr. Reeves didn't know what to say. What the hell was going on with this year's ranking match? James had only fought once in the past 100 years, and the rest of them had already surrendered. Most importantly, this first place didn't seem to be convincing at all, but Tobias didn't care about these things. He turned away and ignored everyone's shocked gazes. All right. Finally, Mr. Reeves accepted the reality and said in a deep voice, Since Tobias Wagner has admitted defeat, tomorrow's battle won't be happening. James Lee takes first place in this year's ranking match. Next, the 3rd to 10th places in the ranking match will determine the number of days they will be able to spend in the Secret Land. 3 days later, the Secret Land will be opened. I will lead the top 10 to enter it. Mr. Reeves announced James as the winner. Although there was some controversy in the crowd, they still approved of this result. In their opinion, although Tobias was very strong, it was still far-fetched for him to be able to defeat James with his unprecedented strength. Everyone felt jealous of James. The reward for first place in this year's competition would definitely make them green with envy. Just the 10-day trip to the Secret Land was enough to make them drool. But there was another thing that everyone was concerned about, and that was whether the king's daughter would take a fancy to this year's champion. When Sandy saw James took first place, she beamed with joy. But James didn't feel anything at that moment. He just scratched his head and felt helpless. He had just broken through and found someone to practice on. Who knew Tobias would give up? This was very disappointing. Tobias, how about we have a private fight and not have to fight on the stage? What do you think? James looked at Tobias with a smile. No, I don't want to. You can fight whomever you want. I don't want to fight you. Tobias quivered, shook his head firmly. Why are you so afraid of me? James looked at him curiously. Hey, don't shiver. I'm not threatening. I just want to shake your hand. I didn't even use my genuine chi. Tobias stabbed his long sword into the ground. He resisted the trembling of his body, and his face turned pale. Can you hide people around your body? Let's talk nicely. Can we not release the auras? Tobias was about to go crazy. He was very scared, and his teeth were chattering. I've already admitted defeat. What else do you want? Aura? You're talking about the dragon she. I just recently acquired it. I can't control it properly. I'm sorry. James recalled Tobias's identity as a beast and immediately understood what was going on. He smiled and said, I see. No wonder you didn't want to fight me. I have an advantage over you. I owe you a favor. I promise to help you once, if I can. Seeing that James had finally withdrawn his aura, Tobias heaved a sigh of relief. He quickly pulled back a dozen feet away from James and then ran away as fast as he could. Huh? Everyone was stunned and in disbelief. Tobias was a rare expert of the younger generation, but this was too cowardly, wasn't it? Did James threaten him or something? Why was he so scared? The corner of James' mouth twitched slightly. He was speechless for a moment before he also walked out of the venue. He hadn't had a good rest in days. Now that the dust had settled, he could finally wind down. James had just walked out of the venue when Donald stopped him. Wait for me. You're in a hurry to reincarnate. Why are you leaving so quickly? Donald took a step forward and arrived in front of James from dozens of feet away. You're so fast. James's pupils shrank when he saw Donald's movement. All he could see was a series of afterimages. This was an extreme speed. Calming himself, James said with a smile, I say, Sir Donald, why were you looking for me? Oh, well, about this. I want you to do me a small favor, just the one, Donald said with embarrassment. You are the unmatched expert, third on the 10 great experts ranking. What can I possibly do to help you? James asked, shrugging his shoulders. That's not relevant. There are many things that you can help me with. Besides, I've watched Sandy grow up. Now that you have a relationship with her, we're practically family. You can't refuse to help me, Donald said shamelessly. James's face changed. He said, Tell me, if it's easy, I'll help. If it's difficult, I'll have to decline. It's not difficult, not at all. Well, I'm just asking you to help me hone my weapon. My level's still a little low. It's no longer as easy as it used to be, Donald said, rubbing his palms. Oh, that's easy. But you have to give me the materials. Without them, I can't help you temper your weapon. James heaved a sigh of relief. He thought it was something serious. If this was just about tempering a weapon, it wouldn't be difficult for him at all. You'll do it? Oh, that's great. You're a good friend. Don't worry, brother. I will protect you from now on. There are not many people in this world who could hurt you. He hugged James. Donald, you're so old. How could you be this seamless? At this moment, Vidal walked over with Sandy and said, I thought you were in a hurry to run out for something important, but it turns out you're here asking for favors. Ever since I started serving you, I haven't gotten any benefits. I've had the same weapon for years. If you were a friend, you'd get me a better one. Donald was upset. He muttered, What happens if I don't take the initiative? Nothing. At the mansion, James smiled when he saw the anxious and expectant look on Donald's face. He didn't waste any time and started preparing to temper his weapon. Sword of Void. What a good sword. James looked at the crystal, silver, eye-catching blade in his hand. This sword is one of the 10 most famous swords. They say that the person who forged it can pierce through the mortal world. It's a man who knows the world. This sword doesn't have any killing intent. It only has elegance and is immortal. Are you sure you want to refine such a sword? It's a good weapon, almost flawless. Its only flaw is that it's only at the early heaven rank. It doesn't match my strength, so even if it can unleash its peak power, it won't be helpful at all. Donald sighed. He shook his head and continued. Originally, I wanted to ask a heavenly artifact master to help me refine this soaring void sword. But he was useless, and he was at the peak of his level. Even the top heavenly artifact master in the Holy Land might not be able to successfully refine this sword, which is why I haven't dared to touch it for so many years. At the end of the day, problem is, those incapable guys.
Donald, what the hell are you talking about? Who do you think has more skills? What do you know about forging weapons? Or do you think I know how to do it?
An old man with a gray beard reaching his chest walked over coldly.
Donald, this is my personal artifact refining chamber. No one is allowed to enter this place, not even the King of the West. Don't you know that? Yet you brought an outsider and you say that I am incapable. How dare you? You better apologize to me now or I'll get you punished. And this guy, where did this yellow-haired rat come from? Who let him sit in front of my crafting furnace? This is blasphemy to my alchemy furnace. Drag him out of here.
James couldn't help but laugh. Who is this? Is this the heavenly artifact master of the Western Kingdom? I don't know what credentials this old man has, but his temper is something else. You're just a heavenly artifact master, not a heavenly pill master. There are only a few artifact masters in the Western Kingdom. Donald shrugged and said helplessly, their status is very noble. I don't see many artifacts that have been refined, but this shelf is really big.
Damn it, he is the mighty void-breaking expert. Ranked 3rd out of the 10 great experts, King of the West's sworn brother. This guy is just a junior heavenly artifact master. What are you trying to do in front of me?
The old master was very offended by the mere suggestion. Oh, I see. Well, since you're the king's friend, he can handle you himself. We won't get involved in this. James suddenly realized something. He ignored the artifact master and said with a smile, by the way, a low-level heavenly artifact like you is only suitable for 9th layer of heavenly human stage experts. Using it to shatter the void is pointless. Let's put it this way. What do you want to make this sword into? If you've thought it through, bring me all the materials you've prepared. I'll help you refine it. As for the level, it depends on how good your materials are, but it won't be a problem for you to reach the high level. After all, tempering isn't a re-refinement. If Donald ignored him, he would have to bear with it. But this yellow-haired brat dared to ignore him, and he was sarcastic at that. This made the master's head explode.
You bastard! Little bastard, I told you to get off my seat. Do you not hear me?
The heavenly artifact master's face turned pale as he shouted at James. Look, if I can't sit here, you can't blame me for this. If he keeps pestering me, I won't be able to refine anything for you. James shrugged. This thing was clearly built by the King of the West. When did it become your private property? You know what? The king's my friend too. I think we should call His Highness over. Yeah, shut up. If you say another word of nonsense, believe it or not, I'll let you meet the King of Hell right now. Donald looked at the heavenly artifact master with a cold face, and a hostile spark flashed across his eyes. All right, I will go and find the king. Some people are really spoiled by his friendship. Usually he would just endure it. Now he finally found a powerful enough person to refine his weapon, and this guy was causing problems. He couldn't stand it any longer. Noticing Donald's murderous gaze, Heavenly Artifact Master suddenly quivered. His face turned pale as he pointed his finger at Donald and said in a trembling voice,
How dare you threaten to attack me? How dare you? You people of the West are all so arrogant and despotic, and so arrogant. I will go and find the King of the West and leave this place. I am the dignified Heavenly Artifact Master. Where will I receive the respect that is due? Why do I have to suffer the wrath of all of you here?
There's no need to look for me anymore. I'm here. They heard the king's voice. He walked over with Sandy, looked at the master indifferently, and said, Master Lambert, I can hear you roar from far away. I wonder where you're going. The master was overjoyed. He didn't notice the indifference in Badao's domineering voice. Tears rolled down his old face.
Your Majesty, you have to make the decision for me. I have been in a good state of mind these few days, and I am thinking of refining a heavenly artifact. But these two people are occupying my work chamber, and Donald even threatened me. He wanted to kill me. Sir, I have been with you for more than 2,000 years. How dare that Donald do this to me? Also, that guy has blasphemed my crafting furnace and has ignored me and insulted me. You must kill him and all of his family.
Oh, I see, the king said indifferently. It seems like they are truly wicked beyond redemption. But Lambert, master, you are asking me to die.
Oh, Your Majesty, what do you mean?
Lambert trembled, and he had a bad feeling in his heart. Nothing. What I wanted to say is that this guy is my future son-in-law. He is also the man that my precious daughter loves. Do you understand what I mean? The king's voice turned cold. As soon as these words were spoken, Lambert's face changed dramatically. He cried out in shock, and his body couldn't help but tremble. This guy was the king's future son-in-law? How was this possible? How could he not know about such a big thing? If the guy really told him the truth, Lambert broke out into a cold sweat when he thought of this. This time, he really put his foot in his mouth. King looked at Lambert again and said slowly, Master Lambert, you have been here in the West for 2,000 years. In these years, I provided you with a lot of equipment, including many heaven-ranked tools. You've refined a total of 15 heavenly artifacts, 3 of the most powerful ones, and 12 high-ranking weapons. Other than that, there was nothing else. And the materials you used to forge them were several times more valuable than the total value of the result. After so many years in the West, I respect you as an honored guest and give you the best treatment. Is this how you repay me? In 2,000 years, you only refined very little. Now you want to slander my friend and my future son-in-law. Why are you disrespecting me like that? Lambert was drenched in cold sweat. The corner of his mouth twitched, but he didn't say a word. He knew that this time he'd really reached the bottom line of the king's intimidating attitude. Forget it. I don't want to hear anything. You know what you've done so far. I think what I've done for you is more than enough, the Tao said indifferently. From now on, you will not be the chief heavenly artifact master. The West doesn't need people like you who hold resources and pretend to be great even if you don't work. You can leave. Go wherever you want. Maybe the other kingdoms will want you. You're free now, so you don't have to suffer here any longer. Lambert's heart was violently thumping. He looked at the king in disbelief.
You really want to kick me out? But I'm the heavenly artifact master. How dare you do this to me?
Lambert felt a chill go down his spine. If he was expelled from the Western Kingdom, the other 3 kings would certainly not accept him. He was no fool. Being abandoned by a king meant that he would no longer have a future. As for the major powers, they were all under the 4 kings' control. They would never accept him. The minor powers? What kind of treatment could a heavenly artifact master give him? His situation suddenly got 100 times worse. Heavenly artifact master, huh? That's right. Indeed, not a small figure, but a figure standing at the top of the world, revered by billions of people. But no matter how high your refining level is, it's meaningless if you don't know how to be a decent human being. Well, it's better not to. The treatment that the King of the West gave you if you were to invite a peak artifact refining master. At least a few dozen, or even more. James smiled to himself. Even if their strongest can only refine peak spiritual artifacts, it will take each of them 50 years to make just one. Then it will take 2,000 years per person to refine 40 peak spiritual artifacts. And you? What value have you created? Besides, you being a so-called heavenly artifact master is not worth mention. It's nothing impressive. Don't think that just because you're able to concoct a heavenly artifact is that mind-blowing. In my eyes, you're just a disciple who hasn't graduated from his apprenticeship. With the materials, making a heavenly artifact is child's play, and you're still far from it. James gave the king a meaningful look, and a smile appeared on his face. He understood what was going on. The king wanted to use his own strength to control this master. Otherwise, why would he allow him to enter this workshop?
Child's play, you yellow-haired brat, you're boasting shamelessly. What do you think a heavenly artifact master is? You're not qualified to judge me in the field of refining.
Lambert shouted angrily. Not qualified? James smiled. He looked at Lambert indifferently. Then, who do you think is qualified to judge you in this world? You're a mere beginner master. Who gave you such confidence to raise your voice in front of me?
The only person in this world who has a right to judge me is a master more powerful than me. Who do you think you are?
When he thought about how the King of the West had fallen out with him because of this guy, Lambert's face darkened. Oh, so it's a higher level master, James said casually. So if my refining ability is higher than yours, does it mean that I have a right to judge you? Will I have the right to hit you? Will I have the right to despise you for not doing anything in your time here but happily taking their money? As soon as these words came out, Lambert turned livid. He was so angry that he laughed instead.
You're still questioning me? For a boy who hasn't even grown a beard, you're very arrogant. You're in your 20s. Do you really think you're that skillful?
It seems like Master Lambert isn't convinced. The king's eyes sparkled. He smiled and said, Since Master Lambert is so confident in his weapon forging technique, then fine. You two should compete. Lambert, if you win, then no matter how many weapons you can refine, I won't say anything. But if you lose, you must sign a lifelong contract with us. From now on, your pay will be reduced to 1/10 of what it is now. Every year, you must refine 5 peak spiritual artifacts. Every 100 years, you must successfully refine 3 heavenly artifacts. Do you agree? As soon as these words were spoken, Lambert knew that the king was deliberately using this opportunity to teach him a lesson. Immediately, he was filled with doubt, and his facial expression kept changing. He didn't know what level of mastery this young man had or why the king trusted him so much. But this James was only in his 20s. Besides, King loved his daughter dearly, and it was absolutely impossible for him to marry his daughter to an old man she didn't like. At his age, Lambert had been immersed in the artifact refining arts for thousands of years. If he lost to this guy, his life would be over. But the condition that the king proposed was very tempting. If he won, he'd live like an immortal for the rest of his life.
Your Highness, are you sure you want me to compete with this guy, not someone else?
Lambert asked after taking a deep breath. Of course I'm talking about him. I don't care about what the competition says. It's up to you. If he loses, I will fulfill my promise. Vidal was serious. But if you lose, I hope that you will keep your promise, Master Lambert. Otherwise, I don't mind killing you. Although I'd rather not. Don't worry, as the king, I always keep my word.
All right. I have nothing else to say. I agree.
Lambert now looked arrogant. He gave James an imposing stare.
Young man, since the King of the West trusts you so much, I will lower myself to compete with you. You can tell me which aspect you want to compete in so that you don't later say that I was unfair to the youngster.
Lower yourself? Oh, come on. James chuckled. Tell me, what do you want to compete in? It's all the same to me. The king has said that the competition was up to you. If I chose, you might not be convinced in my skill even if you lose.
Young people are so arrogant these days. Very well. Then how about we compete in artifact forging and refining?
Lambert sneered.
Let's compete who will refine a better quality weapon.
Refining heavenly artifact? James was taken by surprise. With your level, even if you can refine a heavenly artifact, you need at least a month to finish it in one go, won't you?
Well, how can a heavenly artifact be so easy to refine?
Lambert said sarcastically.
That's a sensitive weapon. One must be in a good mood when they work on it. Only after a long period of accumulation and decades of inspiration can you create a perfect weapon. I know what heavenly artifact model I'm going to refine. I just need a month to refine it.
You need a whole month? James shook his head and said, I don't have the energy to wait for you for that long. I'll be done today. And then we'll have to wait until you finish refining in a month. And then we can compare the results. I think that as a heavenly artifact master, you should be able to tell the difference between a good and a bad result. But first, I'll work on Donald's soaring void sword.
How arrogant! You think you can refine the soaring void sword by yourself? Oh, that is the most perfect sword. Even a peak heavenly artifact master wouldn't dare to claim he can make that sword even better. What right do you have to do that?
Lambert said sarcastically,
Donald, I want to see your face when this guy destroys your sword.
Damn it, old man. If you don't want to watch, then get the hell out of here.
Don't
Bore us with all of this nonsense, Donald snapped. Donald, what is he talking about? Why is he doing you favors? Sandy's pretty face turned red. She stomped her foot and looked at Donald unhappily. He was a smart person. He immediately recovered his senses and laughed. Princess, don't get too excited. I just needed an expert's help with my weapon, and your new friend was generous enough to agree. Sandy looked at James timidly and saw that he didn't care too much about it. She secretly laid out a sigh of relief. What was wrong with her? Why would he care about such small details?
Donald, you better show some respect. I'll decide if I want to leave or not.
Lambert's face turned ashen.
I'm not going anywhere. I want to watch this guy turn that sword of yours into a pile of scrap metal.
You can watch all you want, but you'll have to pay to see me forge a weapon. Access to my work process is a privilege. James looked at Lambert indifferently and said, If you want to watch, you'll have to shut up. As an artifact refining master, don't you know that you can't disturb the process? You should have quite a number of heaven rank crafting materials on you. You can pay me with them. It just so happens that I haven't found any suitable materials yet.
Very well.
Lambert was so angry that he trembled.
All right, I'll give them to you. I'll see what kind of thing you can refine.
As Lambert said that, he threw a storage ring to James. James was very satisfied with the things he found inside. Sure enough, Heavenly Artifact Master still had some tricks up his sleeve. He really had a lot of good stuff on him. Oh, this is the Wind Spirit Profound Crystal. Not bad. It really fits the artistic conception of the sword. James's mouth curved slightly. Lambert's old face darkened when he saw him take all those things, and the corner of his mouth twitched. Are these things enough? If not, I'll find more. The treasure vault is full of treasures. And there's a lot of good stuff, Donald asked quickly. His weapon was worth any cost. No need, these are enough. After all, the highest grade I can reach after tempering is only high-rank heavenly artifact. If I can't reach the level of peak heavenly artifact, no matter how many good things I use, it's a waste. James shook his head slightly. This soaring void sword is perfect in itself. We just need to refine it. There's no need to waste too many forging materials. My goal is to help it advance its grade. What natural attribute do you want this sword to have? Oh, anything. Donald suddenly became interested. I want to narrow the width of this sword by 1/5 of an inch. That way it'll be more convenient for me to use. Secondly, I control the wind natural attribute strength and my specialty is speed. Although this sword has the wind attribute, it is elegant, and it lacks the power of wind cut. The Void Valley is beautiful, filled with vitality, James said with a smile. Everyone has their own ultimate skill, and yours should be the divine wind illusion that was created with the help of top-grade techniques. The divine wind illusion seems to be real and illusory. Through the clone shape formed by the genuine chi and the augmentation of wind power, it's possible to mimic reality when moving at high speed, making people unable to distinguish the location at all. The most important thing is to use the soaring void sword to perform it. That's right. The sword is very important to me, so be careful with it, Donald said with a smile. No problem, James replied. I know what to do. Don't let anyone disturb me. I'm about to start. After saying that, James's eyes focused. He muted the distracting thoughts in his mind, and countless formations began to condense in his mind. He had already decided that not only would he need to temper it, but he would also need to modify the array formation on the soaring void sword. A few minutes later, James suddenly opened his eyes. The purple flame turned into a palm and grabbed at the sword, then placed it into the crafting furnace. Under James's precise control, the temperature of the purple flame kept rising. In just a few minutes, the sword started melting. Donald watched anxiously. He didn't dare to even breathe loudly. If James failed, it would be terrible. It wasn't easy to find a sword that was suitable for him. Lambert looked coldly at James's movement and sneered. Although the flame looked very powerful, he wasn't convinced by James's technique. The most basic first step was to first melt the materials needed and then remove the impurities. This guy's first step was wrong. He melted the sword, but not the materials. Now the time between the two would be different, and they wouldn't be able to fuse at the first moment. It would lead to flaws between, which was a great taboo for refining. It was extremely difficult to refine a heavenly artifact without the skill of a peak heavenly artifact master. One wouldn't even have the courage to attempt such a thing.
Your sword is finished. The materials needed have yet to be purified and smelted. Once the sword has been finalized, the blade will be useless and the quality will drop to a spirit weapon.
Lambert crossed his arms over his chest and looked at Donald, gloating. You shut up. Donald's face turned quiet, and he looked at the old master with hostility. He said in a low voice, You better stay quiet. Don't distract my weapon forging, or regardless of what the king promised you, you'll die today. Feeling Donald's murderous gaze, Lambert's heart stifled and he didn't dare to say another word. He had reason to believe that if James failed to forge the weapon, Donald would blame him. If your own refining level is trash and you can't do this, then don't assume that others are useless, James said calmly. You better shut your mouth and stop barking. If you want to learn, then stop talking and watch how I work. I'm afraid that you won't have this chance again. When the sword started to melt, James's mind shifted. He split out a few more flames and wrapped them around the materials. At the same time, he began to remove impurities. His movements were smooth and natural. He would do 5 things at once.
This is impossible. It's not easy to concentrate on purifying a single material. How could you do so many at the same time? Can you multitask?
Lambert exclaimed in shock. Just because you can't do it doesn't mean that others can't. You're just a mere beginner, master. James raised his eyes and said casually, Also, you better shut up and don't show your surprise in front of me. It's distracting. If you can't keep quiet, then get the hell out of here. After refining for so many years, you don't even understand that you shouldn't disturb others. Looks like all these years have been truly wasted. Under Donald and Sandy's unfriendly gazes, Lambert's old face turned green with anger. But he didn't dare to say another word. But he had to admit that this young guy's way of forging was really different. As a heavenly artifact master, he had never seen anything like this before. In just half an hour, all the materials had been melted and completely synchronized. There was no time error at all. Such a grasp of time was unbelievable. James wasn't messing around. He had complete control over the time of forging. Lambert took a deep breath and stared at the sword in shock. The sword had completely melted, but it would be more accurate to say that it had been softened. Yet it still maintained the shape of a sword without any change. kind of perfect control was this? Especially since the flame had been controlled to the limit. Lambert, right? Okay, you will have to sign a lifelong contract with the King of the West now. You will have to refine weapons for the Western Kingdom for the rest of your life. So, I might as well teach you something. Open your eyes wide and watch carefully, James slowly said. When tempering the heavenly artifact, the fundamental principle is to temper, not refine. So the structure of a heavenly artifact can't be damaged in the slightest. Even the formation inside can't be changed. If it's damaged in the slightest, the artifact wouldn't be the same. It would also become imperfect. So what one has to do is control the flame to the point that it can't be any more precise. After completing the above steps, what you need to do is fuse the purified materials with the sword body. This is also the most difficult step. It ensures that the sword shape won't be destroyed and the materials are fully integrated. What you need is the vibration of the genuine chi. Lambert was initially very resistant to James's words, but when he heard him out, he was shocked. No one had a clear method for refining a heavenly artifact, and only half of them had tried it before. But James had given him a detailed method. Although he had only heard it vaguely and hadn't fully understood it, James sounded absolutely reasonable. In particular, the fact that the genuine chi allowed the materials to fuse with every inch of the sword body. He thought of something, but couldn't get the gist of it. Meanwhile, James continued. He grabbed the melted heaven-rank materials and completely condensed them into the same shape as the sword, placing the sword inside.
If it's placed inside, wouldn't you be able to add a layer of other materials on the outside? How can it merge with the sword completely?
Lambert asked with eyes widened. I'm trying to make the material of every part of the sword evenly distributed. Otherwise, when the genuine chi penetrates the sword, it will cause every part of the sword to desynchronize, leading to flaws, James said faintly. Just like how you brush paint on the wall. After you brush once, if you brush again, it will be uneven. When refining, if there are some areas that are uneven, it'll ruin the whole project. Don't say you don't know this. I've condensed a sword-shaped artifact to the same as the Soaring Void sword. I can guarantee you that every part of the sword is made of uniform materials. The process will also be much simpler.
But how do you know that the metal you casually condensed is uniform?
Lambert asked in confusion. I want you to pick up the hammer and hit it accurately with 300 pounds of strength. Can you do it perfectly? James asked with a smile. It's definitely possible. Practice makes perfect. The most important part of forging is when the hammer strikes the sword. This point determines a person's level of forge. I can definitely do it well. After a pause, Lambert suddenly understood something and muttered,
So that's how it is. My thinking has been narrow-minded. You've reached the limit of your control.
As they say, you must love what you do. James smiled and said softly, Master Lambert, I want to ask you a question. What was your original intention when you were refining? Did you like the industry of refining, or did you like the achievement of seeing your work become a treasure? Or was it just to reach the heavenly artifact master's level and then be respected by everyone and enjoy the status? Well, if your heart isn't in it, then how are you going to craft weapons? Lambert's mouth was dry and wiggling. He felt ashamed. Looking at his face, James didn't say anything. He just smiled and threw all of his energy onto the sword. His hands were placed on both sides of the sword, and intense genuine chi vibrations erupted on the blade. The materials merged into the sword's body.
You used the human weapon resonance to vibrate the genuine chi and then compressed the melted materials into the sword's body. How is that possible? Wasn't the ultimate skill that resonated with the human weapon lost in the past? How did you do it?
Lambert stared blankly, and he could no longer maintain his composure. Human weapon resonance was the lifelong pursuit of an artifact refining master. It was said that if one could resonate with the weapon, they would be able to pass the knowledge of other weapons crafting techniques. They'd be able to refine a saint artifact. James didn't pay attention to the old man. He stared at the Soaring Void sword with all his attention, constantly using the human artifact resonance to compress all the materials into it. After more than an hour, James finally finished compressing the sword. He started to mold and cool it down, and then placed the sword on the forging table and picked up a purple flaming sledgehammer. His chi suddenly changed, and he smashed it at the sword. Everyone in the room widened their eyes when they saw James's smooth and natural movements. They didn't even blink. They knew that James was good at forging weapons, but only when they watched his process did they realize how artful true forging was. All of James's movements were so graceful and natural. There were no mistakes or extra movements. Sandy looked at James with infatuation. He was completely immersed in his handsome and concentrated face. That serious and focused man was quite charming. As a heavenly artifact master, Lambert knew how difficult and profound James's actions were. Besides, he'd mastered the resonance of the weapon. When he was hammering, he would save a lot of time while allowing his arms to take turns to rest. He wouldn't have any muscle fatigue. This was the perfect way to forge a weapon. He no longer had any doubt that James was a peak heavenly artifact master, or perhaps even above it. When he thought of what he'd said earlier, Lambert felt like dying. His old face turned red and he couldn't hold it in any longer. He said he was going to lower himself to compete with James. Now it seems like it was the other way around. With his two skills, what right did he have to attempt to surpass James in artifact forging? This young man had casually refined a heavenly artifact. It had only been 3 hours, but he was almost finished. With this speed, he could refine one or even several in a day. When he thought of this, Lambert felt a chill run down his spine. This man could sweep across the entire Holy Land by himself.
Is it over? Is the refining done?
Lambert cried out in alarm when he saw James's movements stop after some time. Not yet. There's still one last step, James said slowly. Although the formation in this sword isn't bad, it's just average in my opinion. I will modify it a bit and engrave the formation that I created myself. Only then can it be considered finished. If I use my formation, the power of the sword can increase by at least 30%. After saying that, James grabbed the sword and a bunch of curved symbols appeared on it. The light on the sword became brighter and brighter.
What formation is this? What is this special pattern of symbols?
Lambert took a deep breath and stared at the soaring void sword. It was the most exquisite artifact he'd ever seen. As an artifact refining master, he knew very well that once the formation and rune script were combined, they would create the strongest weapon. But this rune technique had been lost long ago. How could this young man know it? Could he be omnipotent? After another half an hour, James finally finished refining. He took a deep breath and said with a smile, "All right, it's a success. I thought it was only a high-rank heavenly artifact, but I didn't expect its grade to be close to the peak heavenly artifact. This is a pleasant surprise." "You finished refining it just like that?" Donald was the first to recover from the shock. He rubbed his palms together and fixated on the soaring void sword in front of him. He was filled with excitement. "Let's take a closer look," James said with a smile. "See if you're satisfied with it. Now, if you're not satisfied, we can make changes." Donald took the sword and felt its weight. He saw that the sword was no different from before, aside from it being a little narrower and more elegant. Besides, it was now inscribed with runes that he couldn't understand. But when he held the sword, he felt a blood connection, made his spirit tremble. "Why do I feel my blood connection even stronger? How did you do that? Feels like I'm holding my own arm." "Is it because I made it based on your own energy to make it compatible? Both the weight and the attributes of the sword and your familiarity with it all fit you perfectly. Because the sword contains your genuine chi," James explained. "You learned so many things by just relying on the remaining genuine chi in the sword. It's unbelievable." Donald gently stroked the blade, took a deep breath, and said in shock, What are these runes? Is it a formation? Why can't I understand it? Formation? James said with a smile. This is a miniature talisman and print formation that I combined with the talisman and print. They enhance the sword and make it stronger. I won't say any more. You can enter the genuine Shi. If you intentionally activate a third of the formation, you'll know what kind of ability and power it has. All right. I'll go outside and test it. Donald couldn't suppress his excitement and rushed out. Everyone slowly walked out. When they saw Donald standing with his sword in hand, they calmed down. He automatically commanded respect when people saw him handle his weapon. Donald moved. Genuine Shi on his body burst forth with a loud bang, pouring into the sword. The runes shone brightly, and then the sword disappeared right in front of everyone's eyes. That's right. It disappeared.
Wait, what's going on? Where's the sword? Why did it disappear? No, I can still feel the energy fluctuations of the genuine Shi. The sword has become invisible. How did you do that?
Lambert cried out in shock. How did you do it? King was also in shock. His heart was palpitating. He had to admit that the significance of this thing was too great. Although it was invisible, they could still feel the genuine Shi present. Still, if an opponent couldn't see the sword, they wouldn't be able to predict the direction of the attack. This would be absolutely fatal. It isn't as complicated as I imagined, James said with a smile. Because the soaring void sword is elegant, I just wanted it to be invisible, so it's more intimidating. Talisman and Prince effect is triggered by the refraction and reflection of the light. That's what makes the sword seem invisible. Of course, it's only a perception. Boom! As they were talking, the ground suddenly exploded, and with the swing of the sword, the entire courtyard was instantly broken into pieces. Donald, are you trying to tear down my house? The king asked, annoyed. Of course not. I didn't expect this myself. I only used a tiny bit of power, but the sword is just too strong, Donald said in embarrassment. He looked at James and said excitedly, Well, my friend, what else are you capable of? I'm sure that you can do something even more powerful. Of course, James smiled. Enter the genuine Shi and activate 2/3 of the formation. See it for yourself. 2/3, huh? Okay. Donald's eyes flashed. He immediately inserted the genuine Shi into the sword and activated 2/3 of the talisman and print. In the next moment, Donald slashed in the direction of a hill. It was not damaged at all, but the towering tree at the side was cut in two. What happened? Was that a sword fake? The king said in a daze. Fake? The corner of James's mouth rose and he said, That is not a fake sword. I used the formation to combine the projection with a hidden attack. The sword that you can see seems to be an illusion, but it isn't. It can be controlled so that up to 50% of the power can be allocated to it. What Donald excels the most at is speed. He can control the changes between the real and fake swords. So the correct way to say it is, he could unleash 2 sword strikes at the same time, but their power would be half. One in the light and the other in the dark. But perhaps he could only unleash 1 strike. The other sword attack was a decoy. It sounds complicated, but it's easy to understand. This is genius. Who knew that you could temper a sword to such an extent? It's not an exaggeration to say that Donald's strength increased by a huge margin just by relying on this sword. I'm afraid that the 10 great experts will grow by 1 more person, the king said confidently. But I'm very curious. What will happen if the entire formation is activated? Well, it's just the ultimate move he used in the past. But I added some aspects as a bonus. That move will consume 60 to 70% of his genuine Shi, James said. In terms of power, I'm afraid that even a king level like you will find it difficult to deal with. Even the king was quite shocked. A king level was very different from a shattering the void level. With his current strength, Donald could seriously injure his opponent. There was no doubt about it. But with the enhancement of the sword, he suddenly had so much more power. What was the ultimate move of that sword? If it weren't for the fact that his weapon was a pseudo-holy artifact, he would be tempted to ask James to temper it too. Well, this feels great. Just the creativity alone is amazing. Oh, it's so cool. This is the first time I've seen a sword that can move my heart like this, and it's tailor-made for me. Donald is giddy like a child. He was filled with excitement. The sword that he had longed for so long had finally been refined. James wasn't surprised by its power at all. Everything was as he expected. He smiled faintly and said, "Master Lambert, I've finished tempering this sword. Let's move on to our competition. I'll refine a weapon, and if you can make something that surpasses mine, you'll win. If you can't, I hope that you'll keep your promise." After hearing that, Lambert's body swayed. He forced a smile, and then, under the shocked gazes of the crowd, he fell to his knees and bowed to James.
"Master, please forgive me for offending you. I'm just trash compared to you, sir. How dare I compete with you, James? I'm really not qualified to do that. I admit defeat."
Lambert was hopeless. He was shocked to find out what the Heavenly Artifact Master could do, and he couldn't do any of that himself. "Oh, Master Lambert, you admit defeat just like that? If you give up before the competition, you might regret it later," James said, squinting.
"Don't make fun of me. You've reached a level of refinement that no one else could achieve. You've refined a beginner heavenly artifact to a level that is close to a peak heavenly artifact. How could I ever compare?"
Lambert said bitterly.
"Even if you can't refine a seed artifact right now, I'm afraid you can still make a pseudo-holy artifact, can't you?"
"Well, I really haven't tried that yet," James smiled. "As for admitting defeat, you should tell the king. Your bet was with him. I'm tired. I'll go get some rest."
"Wait a minute, sir."
Lambert stopped James.
"Master, can I learn from you? If you'll accept me, I'll do anything you want."
"Learn from me?" James was taken aback. "One disciple's enough for me. I don't want to take on another. Besides, you're already a heavenly artifact master. What else do you want to learn from me? How to multitask human weapon resonance? Or is it a refining technique?"
"None of them. All of these are secondary."
Lambert took a deep breath and said sincerely,
"What you said before keeps echoing in my mind. Refining a weapon is to refine a person. I've learned that from you that it's far more than just refining techniques. It's instead about how to be a person and regain oneself at the same time. Just based on these words, you are qualified to be my teacher."
"Well, you're quite good with words. What I said before wasn't lost on you." James smiled and paused to think, and then said, "In that case, I will take you as my disciple. You still have a senior colleague who isn't by my side, but you will see him in the future."
"Thank you, Master."
Lambert was overjoyed when he heard that. He asked respectfully,
"This person you teach must be very powerful, right? What's his forging technique?"
"Oh, his talent? It's trash." James curled his lips when he thought of Dorian. He said, "He was kneeling in front of my door, and the only way to get him to stop was to take him in. But he's a smith. He hasn't really learned much about alchemy. A few months ago, he was only at the great achievement level Earth Pill Master. If he hasn't broken through to the perfection level by the time I see him in a few months, I'll have to punish him." James felt nostalgic. He didn't know how his friends were doing, what Terry and Stephen West were up to with establishing the Holly sect of James Lee.
"Master Lee, you're not only a top-tier heavenly artifact master, but also an alchemist?"
Lambert exclaimed, shocked. Donald crossed his arms over his chest and scoffed. "You're awesome, far beyond my imagination. You're the top heavenly artifact master and also a heavenly pill master and divine formation master. You've accumulated 8 lifetimes worth of luck. I'm still jealous of the grilled fish. Oh, my friend, can you grill a few more for us to eat? Lambert was quite shocked. His entire body was trembling. He had absolute respect for this teacher of his. Yes, yes. The king's spirit shook as he said, why didn't you tell me earlier that you're such a good cook? I'd love for you to roast a few heavenly fish for me. I don't want to peak earth fish. Since Master Lambert has become your disciple, I won't deliberately make things difficult for him. But you should make more delicious food for me. Yes, I also want that big prawn from last time. It tasted amazing. As soon as he said that, Sandy's face turned red and she said with embarrassment, that day, we also roasted quite a lot and didn't finish it. Donald said that my dad wanted to eat some, so I sent a few. You wouldn't blame me for that, would you? James couldn't help but roll his eyes. I'm not a cook. Why are you all staring at me? And by the way, what about my prize for first place? If you want to eat, bring me the ingredients and add some heaven-ranked medicinal herbs. All right, it's settled then. You'll cook for us. I'll go catch top-grade heavenly fish that we keep. As for the heaven-rank herbs, I'll get them for you too. Finally, there'll be something delicious to eat. After saying that, Donald vanished like a wisp of smoke. Heavenly fish was a top-grade fish that he'd nurtured for over 1,000 years. After eating it, one's soul power would increase. The king wasn't stingy either. He gave James all the treasures he wanted, including the universe profound fruit. But James didn't want the false heaven pill. He could easily refine his own heaven pills, so what use did he have for the false heaven pill? This is where the technique of the West resides. Almost all of our kingdom's techniques are here. You can take whatever you want, the king said to James. He chuckled and added meaningfully, if it was someone else, I'd only allow them to take one. But you can take as many as you want. After you've seen a technique, you can give it back to me in good condition. When James walked into the room, he saw a dazzling array of techniques. It was too much for his eyes to take in. Dow explained, most of the techniques here are ordinary. If you want something more interesting, go upstairs. The ones upstairs can be cultivated to the 9th layer of heavenly human stage or even higher. Even the techniques I cultivate myself are inside, but you're the human emperor's successor, so you should already have enough of these things. You just need to see if there are any techniques or martial skills suitable for you. After all, the path that an emperor's heir wants to take is different. You know about that, huh? James's heart sank, and he looked at the king in surprise. Of course I know. Vidal smiled. The purple flame you have is created by merging with the indestructible fire, right? Since ancient times, the concept of destruction was something that only the 3rd generation of human emperor-level warriors possessed, so you must have obtained the inheritance of the 3rd generation. I've been looking for this inheritance for so many years. Perhaps this is fate. Don't worry, I have no agenda. The 3rd generation has helped me in the past when I was plotted against and escaped to the West. If I really wanted to deal with him, I might still be able to find it. James nodded slightly. Indeed, the inheritance of the 3rd generation was in the Western Kingdom. If the king really searched for it, he might be able to find it. He just wasn't determined enough. Frankly, I have been struggling for a long time after learning that my daughter has fallen in love with the human emperor's successor, the king continued. It was her who ended up persuading me. Not only did she help me resolve the knot in my heart, but she also helped me break through. I don't care about anything else, or about how many girlfriends you have, but you can't let Sandy down, or else you have to know that I'll kill you. I know, James said with a bitter smile. Just like how I never hurt Sandy. I don't know her at all. I just wanted to participate in the match to win the universe profound fruit and increase my strength. Who knew that it would turn out like this? Don't worry. I won't let Sandy down. She is a pure woman. I believe you, Vidal said with a smile.
As the human emperor's successor, you're a very popular man. I understand that. Okay, well, let's cut the crap. I'm still waiting for you to cook the grilled fish. James was speechless. After the king left, James stayed for some time to let his mind settle and to meditate. James, about 30 feet to your right, there's an object that contains an extremely powerful fire energy. Go and take a look. It might be useful to you, Kenny Lee said to him telepathically. Oh, a powerful fire energy? Could it be? James was stunned. He rubbed his chin and said with a smile, could it be something similar to the divine fire pearl? That would be impossible, but I felt the same aura as the pearl, Kenny Lee said in a childish voice. Maybe it's the third generation fire strength martial skill. After all, back in the third generation land, did you see the secret manual for a fire technique? James sighed and said, the third emperor did indeed have an ultimate skill. It's called the divine flame. It's the crystallization of his life's fire strength. It was the ultimate skill that was created specifically for him. Unfortunately, the divine flame has been lost. The third generation wanted to pass it to me, but his soul was already dissipated, so he didn't have the time. When he thought of the death of the third emperor, James felt a sense of guilt that came from the bottom of his heart. Then let's go and take a look, Kenny Lee said. James walked towards the spot Kenny Lee pointed out. Bottom of the bookshelf, James saw a book that was covered in dust. Just as Kenny Lee had said, it was filled with dense fire energy, and when he touched it, the book was warm. This really does feel familiar, James murmured. When he saw the words on the cover, he was both shocked and overjoyed. There were only 2 words written on the cover of the book. Divine Flame. Is it really the divine flame? James exclaimed. His heart was filled with excitement. He quickly dusted off the book and sat down cross-legged to read it carefully. James was completely fascinated. Amazing. This is the true use of flames, the technique that I've mastered as child's play compared to what's described here. No wonder the third generation was able to reach such a level with just the fire strength. Fire domain, fire rain, turning into fire within one's body. This is an attack pattern I've never thought of. So you still have a long way to go. Kenny Lee crawled out of James's arms, wagged its tail, and squatted on his shoulder. It stroked its beard and said with a smile, I've made a great contribution, right? You have to grill a fish for me as a thank you. And I want a big fat fish, the biggest you'll find. Do you think you're a cat? Don't you only eat flames? When did you start eating fish? James laughed. Aren't you the same? You eat different types of food, too, Kenny Lee said patronizingly. I'll have you know that I eat fire to survive in advance, while I can also eat fish to enjoy delicious food.